Welcome to Screen versus Reality, where we separate movie fiction from historical fact. Right, so, you've probably seen The Revenant, Leonardo DiCaprio, crawling through the snow, getting mauled by a bear, and fighting for survival. But here's the thing, the real story of Hugh Glass is honestly just as wild, maybe even more impressive. So, let's break down what's true and what Hollywood made up. Before we get into it, quick numbers for you. The Revenant scored an 8 out of 10 on IMDb and 78% on Rotten Tomatoes. It cost $135 million to make and ended up earning more than $500 million worldwide, $533 million to be exact. That's not a flop, that's a full-blown hit. And Leonardo DiCaprio, he finally won his first Academy Award for this film. The movie also took home 2 more Oscars, Best Director and Best Cinematography. Now, a quick note about the characters, because this matters for what's coming next. Leonardo DiCaprio plays Hugh Glass, Tom Hardy plays John Fitzgerald, Will Poulter plays Jim Bridger, Domhnall Gleeson plays Captain Andrew Henry, the expedition leader, and Forrest Goodluck plays Hawk, Glass's son in the movie. Alright, now let's get into what actually happened. So, before we get to the bear attack, let's add a little context. Hugh Glass was part of an expedition led by a man named Major Andrew Henry. The group worked for the Rocky Mountain Fur Company, a business co-founded by William Ashley and Henry himself. Back in 1823, the expedition was traveling through the Dakota Territory, trapping beavers, and that might sound a little strange today, but back then, beaver fur was incredibly valuable. It was used to make felt hats, and those hats were one of the biggest fashion trends of the time. So this wasn't just a group of adventurers wandering through the wilderness. This was a real business, and these men were risking their lives, hoping to make a fortune from the fur trade. So, Hugh Glass is out scouting ahead of his group when he walks right into a mother grizzly bear protecting her cubs. And yeah, she doesn't hesitate. She tears into him, clawing his back open, ripping apart his scalp, going for his throat, and breaking several of his ribs. His crew hears him screaming. They rush over and somehow they manage to kill the bear, but by then Hugh Glass is barely alive. And honestly, the movie absolutely nails this part, like almost exactly how it happened. It's genuinely one of the most realistic bear attack scenes ever put on film. This is one of those rare moments where reality was already horrifying enough that Hollywood didn't need to exaggerate a thing. Now, here's where things take a really dark turn. The leader of the expedition, Major Andrew Henry, looks at Hugh Glass and honestly believes he isn't going to survive the night. The group is deep inside dangerous territory, so Henry makes a difficult decision. He asks for a few volunteers to stay behind and wait for Glass to pass away, give him a proper burial, and then catch up with the rest of the expedition. Now, in the movie, 3 people stay behind with Glass. You've got Jim Bridger, John Fitzgerald, and Glass's son, Hawk. So, a few days go by. They're still out there just waiting for Hugh Glass to die, and that's when John Fitzgerald starts getting frustrated. He is thinking, what's the point? They're risking their own lives, sitting in dangerous territory, guarding a man who was probably not going to survive anyway. So, he decides to speed things up. He leans over Glass and tries to smother him, just to end it faster. But then, Hawk sees everything. He rushes in, trying to stop Fitzgerald. And that's when Fitzgerald kills Hawk right there. Not because Hawk attacked him, but because Hawk had witnessed everything. If Hawk made it back alive, everyone would know that Fitzgerald had tried to murder a helpless, dying man. So, killing Hawk wasn't just murder. It was about covering his tracks and getting rid of the only witness who could expose what he'd done. After that, Fitzgerald and Bridger take Glass's rifle his knife, and the rest of his gear. Then they leave him there. Still alive, they return to the expedition and tell everyone Hugh Glass is dead. Brutal, right? Now, here's the twist. In real life, only 2 men stayed behind, not 3. The volunteers were Jim Bridger and John Fitzgerald. There was no third person watching over Hugh Glass that night, because Hawk never existed. He is a completely fictional character created specifically for the movie. And that means the murder scene never happened either. It was entirely invented by Hollywood. So, why add Hawk at all? Because he gives Hugh Glass a deeply personal reason to want revenge, and at the same time, he transforms Fitzgerald from a frightened man making a selfish decision into a cold-blooded villain. It makes for a much stronger movie, but it isn't real history. Okay, so this is the part that turned Hugh Glass into a legend. He wakes up alone, no weapon, a broken leg, and wounds covering almost his entire body. Most people would have given up, but Glass didn't. He sets his own leg, packs his wounds with rotting wood and rawhide, and then he starts crawling. It takes him about 6 weeks, 6 long weeks to crawl and eventually walk nearly 200 miles to the nearest fort. Along the way, he is surviving on berries, roots, and anything else he can find. At one point, he even eats meat from a carcass that wolves had already picked clean. Now, the movie takes this story and turns it up to 11. A horse falls off a cliff. Glass dives into an icy river. He's chased by Native American warriors. And yes, he even spends the night inside the carcass of a dead horse just to stay warm. None of that actually happened. The real story didn't need massive action scenes. It didn't need impossible escapes. It was something far more incredible. Day after day, week after week, a badly wounded man dragging himself across the wilderness, refusing to die. So, Hugh Glass survives against all odds. He tracks down both of the men who left him behind, Jim Bridger and John Fitzgerald. But then comes the biggest surprise of the entire story. He doesn't kill either of them. Bridger was still just a teenager, and Glass chooses to forgive him. As for Fitzgerald, by then he had enlisted in the United States Army. Killing a soldier would have made Hugh Glass a wanted man himself. So instead, Glass simply takes back his rifle and walks away. No final duel, no bloody revenge, no dramatic fight to the death. But the movie gives us exactly that. A brutal showdown in the snow. Glass versus Fitzgerald, until Fitzgerald is finally killed. It makes for an unforgettable ending, but it never happened. Hollywood needed a dramatic finale, so it gave the story an ending that real history never did. And honestly, I think that's the real point of this story. People have been telling the story of Hugh Glass for more than 200 years, not because of a revenge plot, but because of what he actually accomplished. A man who refused to die, who survived betrayal, and who, after everything he'd been through, chose forgiveness instead of revenge. The movie turns it into a revenge story because that's what sells movie tickets. But the real ending, a man choosing mercy after everything he endured, that tells you far more about who Hugh Glass really was. So, the next time someone brings up The Revenant, you will know exactly what's real and what's just Hollywood.